Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, welcome everybody to Morris Talk Live 100. I'm your host, Tarhaka Amana El Bay, and this evening we are paying a tribute to the late, great Dr. Walter Williams, a legend. Our special guest will be Brother Yoel and company. He'll be in here with us this evening. And for those of you who would like to call into the broadcast to give your condolences or say something about our illustrious brother, the number to dial into the broadcast is 563-999-3443. And just press 1 on your phone. That'll give me an indication that you got something to say. Okay? And I'm going to proceed as usual with our commercials. So if y'all will hold on, we'll go on into the broadcast with the tribute.
Let me make sure I got this right. You have a mortgage. You were told the bank would give you a loan for your home. But when you got to the bank, they didn't give you anything or sign anything. But presto changeo, you have a new mortgage. Then you find out your mortgage has been sold to another company you don't know and don't have any contract with. It seems to me something is wrong. When you walked out the bank, you had some papers in your hand, but no check. Let's get to the bottom, down to the bottom of this kind of stuff. Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.org. That's TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Let's bring the fraud to a close. How about that? This kind of stuff is going on all over the United States, but most people don't even understand what to do about it. TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Let me make sure I got this one right also. Someone tells you that you must pay them money about your children in the form of child support. They also say they would suspend your driver's license. And they said they would garnish your wages. Who were they talking to? A debtor? Or did they make the mistake and say it to a creditor? When you got married, they said it was a part of that also. Request my free report at TarhakaDebtElimination.org. That's TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Let's have some fun. Fill out the contact us form for my free report, and I'll rush it straight to your email box. What about this banking stuff? What's going on in the United States? I tell you what, request my free report at TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Peace. If it is against the law for the bank to loan out depositors' money to you, how could the bank give you a loan? And if that's the case, how are they able to keep their doors open? And in some cities, they have the biggest buildings in town. What happens to the person who deposits money in the bank? What do they receive outside of nickels and dimes in the form of what's called interest? How can you get paid? Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.org. That's TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Fill out the contact us form and I'll rush you my free report. Let's get down to the bottom of this situation. Let me show you how what's going on in how to deal with it. Okay, TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Peace, y'all.
Okay, we're ready to go. Keep in mind, if you have something to say, press 1 on your phone. That'll give me an indication that you have something to say. The number to dial in the broadcast, once again, 563-999-3443. Press 1 on your phone. If you have something to say, I'll open up the phone lines and you can state your piece. Our illustrious brother has gone on to be with the ancestors. I got a call out of Chicago and they told me that he had passed away. And I want to know also about what was the status on his last book, because we know he was in the process of finishing up a book. So when my special guest arrives, I think he'll know more about that than I do. But needless to say, we're going to go on into the broadcast, and I would like to bring out one more time Dr. Walter Williams.
Your home for this interview.
Okay.
It's a very marvelous and lovely home.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you.
Brother Williams, I'd like to begin just by saying that it is said that truth will set us free. And it's obvious that we have not found truth because we are not a free people. And I have come here in Chicago to ask you to dig down into your wellspring of wisdom and your research. In the past, you've shared an enormous amount of research with us. I want you to help us as African people find truth that will lead us to an understanding of our ancient history, back to Africa, back to ourselves, back home, that we may be free. And I'd like to begin this interview, sir, asking you, in your opinion, why it is that millions and millions of Africans, even on the continent and throughout the diaspora, cannot seem to marry themselves to their history. I know it's been presented to us in a distorted form, but why is it that we can't find our way back home?
Well, Thompson, it has something to do with the people who created the subject matter called history. And those people were the Europeans. They created history during the Renaissance era of Europe, during the age of supposed enlightenment for the Europeans. And we're talking about in the middle of the 16th century when the Renaissance for the learning process by way of literature and by way of a beginning organized school system for the Europeans, which was created in Europe, in Germany, for the very first time in world history. And in their curriculum, they created what is known as a subject called history. And as you know, whoever writes history controls history. So therefore, they wrote us as an African people out of history. And if they put us in history, they put us in history as a negative form or negative force. In other words, the only way that we can find our way back to our greatness is that we, as African people, have to claim ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt is the only entity in the whole entire world that will give us back our greatness. So we, as an African people, we're going to have to find our way back to ancient Egypt. And in so doing, you will find our greatness, which is lying unclaimed in the continent of Africa. And the second thing that's blocking us from understanding our history is that we're going to have to divest ourselves of all religions. Religion has divided us spiritually, mentally, and otherwise. So therefore, we're going to have to divest ourselves of all religions. We have to know that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. We have to know that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of the Prophet Muhammad. We have to know that there's never been men that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, or Moses. That all religions are man-made, pagan, heathen, occult religions based on mythology. We're going to have to understand that. In order for you to understand anything about these religions, we're going to have to know ancient history. And in so doing, you will uncover the true facts about these man-made religions based on mythology. The third thing we're going to have to do is that we're going to have to understand that man created these religions, and in so doing, man created God. We're going to have to get away from this God concept, which is destroying us as a people, because we don't understand that concept, because they teach you that God is synonymous with the Creator, which is totally untrue. Okay? And one has to remember some true facts. about religion, one has to realize that a human being on earth, no matter what race, creed, or color that he or she belonged to, was created by their personal creator who used their mother and father as human instruments to bring them forth into this world in human form, giving them an indwelling spirituality. But your Creator never gave you a religion. It was man who gave you the religion. Your Creator gave you an indwelling spirituality that's still indwelling inside of you at this very moment that I'm talking to you. Your spirituality is connected with the whole entire universe by way of your pineal gland. Every human has a pineal gland. And that pineal gland serves as a conduit between the human being and the whole universe. Okay? And the bottom of your pineal gland is your nostrils. What do you do with your nostrils? You intake air. You breathe to keep that indwelling spirit alive that's inside of you. And once you understand that, this conduit, the pineal gland, which is nothing but brain fibers that's connected in your brain, and your nose, like I said before, is the bottom of that, which intakes air to keep those conduit and your brain cells alive, and thereby keeping you in consciousness with the whole entire universe. This pineal gland serves as a conduit to connect you with your Creator. It serves as a receiver and a sender. Okay? And once you understand that it's you, the human being, having an indwelling spirituality that's connected to the whole entire universe. This is your spiritual power. This conduit exposes you consciously to the whole entire universe via this conduit that you have inside of you as a human being. And you also have to realize that there's a little voice in every human being on earth. And that little voice that you hear and talk to, and that little voice that gives you directions, gives you hunches and ideas and things of that nature, that's your Creator. This was given to you free by your Creator who used your mother and father as human instruments to bring you forth into this world. You have to understand that. You have to also understand that your Creator never gave you a religion. Your Creator gave you everything that you would spiritually need to sustain yourself as long as you live. But your Creator never gave you a religion. All these religions, this is the one that's keeping us down in chains and in bondage to these various religions. Because what happens, these religions clogs your artery between you and your Creator, simply because every religion has laws, rituals, customs, and ceremonies for an individual who embraces a religion to abide by. This keeps you in bondage, in spiritual bondage. You were born spiritually free. You were born free of that until your parents or someone introduced you to a religion that you know nothing about. Anybody who says that they are a Christian or a Muslim or black Hebrew Israelite or a Jew, a Buddhist, knows nothing about those religions. You see? So one has to realize that. And then also one has to realize that there are four things that keep all religions together, or there are four things which is the glue that keep all religions together. Those four things are one's belief in the religion, one's faith in the religion, and every religion has literature that's attached to that various and forms of religion. In other words, the Christianity has the Holy Bible, Islam has the Quran, Judaism has the Torah and the Talmud. Those are religious literatures that's connected to these various religions, the three major Western religions. And the fourth thing that keeps these religions together is fear. They teach you by way of fear. They make you afraid to not to believe in these religions. And this is wrong. Also, I mentioned to you that that little voice inside of you is your personal creator that you are in contact with 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. Okay? Now, what happens is that since man have created a religion and not your creator didn't give you a religion, your creator gave you an indwelling spirituality. But man created a religion, and also with every religion there's God attached to it. Okay, every religion has a God. Christianity has this European, this dead white man on the cross.
All right. There you have it, the legendary Dr. Walter Williams. Now, we're going to get down in depth into what he's saying, because he has provided us with some stuff that was totally unbelievable. But one thing you discover about people, anytime you tell them something that is outside of what they know, or they are, as the other brother put it, outside of their circumference of knowledge, they are attacking, especially when it comes to religion. Now, you would think that if you was a Christian and you've been going to church, you've been reading the Bible, and nothing's really happening in your life, and you just giving away your money and messing up a good Sunday. But anyway, you would think that if somebody told you, well, there's never been a man in the history of the world that ever walked the face of the earth by the name of Jesus Christ, and I can prove that beyond any shadow of a doubt, you would think that an individual who is thinking would say, well, look, I'm involved in this Christian thing. I would like to hear what you got to say. I want you to prove that to me. But that's not the attitude you're going to get. You're going to be attacked immediately. Oh, let's go to number 2.
Said that this is Jesus the Christ, the God of Christianity. And they teach these people that this is God, period. That this God, this European image, is synonymous with the Creator. Totally incorrect. Mm-hmm. Then Islam has Allah. Then Judaism has Yahweh, Jehovah, etc., etc. These are the gods of these various religions. But one has to realize, since all religions are man-made, that man created God in his own image. Man created God for these various religions. These religions, using God, which the God or the word God can only be used for religious purposes only. That's what it was intended for. Now, what happens to an individual who embraces a religion is that they entice that human being to come outside of him, of their spiritual power, of their indwelling spirituality that their Creator gave them at the time of their birth, to come outside of that, and what they give you in its place of your indwelling spirituality and your Creator, in other words, it disconnects you from your Creator, is that they give you God in its place. So therefore, you take all that spiritual power that your Creator gave you, free at the time of your birth, and you inject it into this dead God, or this dead white man on the cross, or into some kind of Allah, or some kind of Jehovah, and etc., etc. See? So therefore, this keeps us into total confusion. We can never find our way back to our ancestral roots and our ancestors as being the great people that they are, the ancient Egyptians. We have to go and find our way back to ancient Egypt. That's what we have to do. No place, no other country in Africa will give us back our greatness, but the culture, the civilization that was created in Egypt during the time of antiquity by an African people that is known to us today as the ancient Egyptians.
Brother Williams, Brother Walter, you said that that Egypt is the only historical place in Africa that will give us back the full understanding of our history and our greatness and our impact to the rest of the world. But perhaps you will define for us what encompassed Egypt. When we say Egypt, what location, what territory are we talking about? What people are we talking about?
Well, you see, you have to go back into the time of antiquity. The term antiquity means ancient times. And you go back and look at your world map, and you look and find in the continent of Africa the country called Egypt. That was all part of it. And then you look, as you go south, you'll find a country on the right-hand side of your map called Ethiopia. And then you look on the left-hand side, across from Ethiopia is the Sudan. And then you will understand that inside of Egypt, there were living a people called Nubians. So what I'm saying is that the Nubians, the ancient Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Sudanese who live in the Sudan are all one and the same, simply because they made up what is known as the Nile Valley civilization. The ancient Egyptian had an ancient Egyptian African Commonwealth. And under that umbrella of the Commonwealth of ancient Egypt encompassed these land areas, these geographical land areas that I just mentioned to you just a moment ago, that created the existence of the Nile Valley civilization.
I'd like to ask you as a beginning point, because I think that this is going to be a very exciting and explosive exploration. We're talking about history. But you just laid out for me history. When history began, who wrote history, how it evolved. And I'd like for you to go through that whole process again, because we're not going to understand what you're talking about as we proceed unless we first get a deep understanding of what we mean by history, when it begins, who wrote it, who established it, what did they encompass, and how they did it.
Okay. First place, you have to go back and understand that the ancient Egyptians were the only people during the time of antiquity that had invented a writing form. They invented 3 forms of writing that we know of today. And those forms of writing is known as the Meta-Nature hieroglyphics, which are pictorial symbols. And the second form is known as the hieratic demotic, which is a cursive form. And the third is the phonetic writing, or the printed form, called the phonetic script. Sometimes it's misnomer and called the Phoenician script. There's no such thing as a Phoenician, because Phoenician leads you back to the Canaanites and the Israelites, and that leads you back to Bible literature, and you cannot use the Bible to establish any form of history. Mm-hmm. Okay, in fact, I take the Bible in my lectures and throw it in the garbage can because it's historically worthless. Mm-hmm. So we have to go back to the people who created writing as a form or as a discipline. And the people that created writing is known to us today in history as the ancient Egyptians. Mm-hmm. They were the only people that were literate during the time of antiquity. No other races of people, no place on planet Earth had a form of writing. They were illiterate, including the Greeks and the Romans. There's never been an institution that ever came out of Greece during the time of antiquity. So rule the Greeks out of being a literate people, okay? All writing forms came from one source, the ancient Egyptians. And like I said before, they created these 3 forms of writing. And the hieratic script, which is a cursive form, is the cursive form of the phonetic printed form. Okay? So you have to understand that. Now, the ancient Egyptians did not write a history of themselves. The people during the time of antiquity never wrote a history of themselves. But let's get back to the ancient Egyptians not writing a history of themselves. If they wrote anything about themselves, it was in pictorial form. known as the hieroglyphs. And the hieroglyphics, Meta Nature, has never, ever been deciphered. So don't let Europeans tell you, and their African-trained scholars tell you, that the hieroglyphics has been deciphered, because the hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. Okay? And in my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, which is this book here, the revised edition, I have on page 146 an appendix of why the Meta Nature hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. Anyone that wants to repudiate that should read this and explain to you step by step why I said that the hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. So here you have a people, one race, one culture, and one civilization of people living in Africa who are Africans. I didn't say were Africans. They still are Africans, the ancient Egyptians. Had the only form of writing that has ever existed on planet Earth. Okay? Then you have to modulate through the process of time and come up to a time in history. And by the way, history is created by four components: time, people, places, and events. That's the substance and the ingredients that create history. Okay? And I'm going to skip a little bit. They said that the Greeks had an alphabet. Greeks never had an alphabet. I'm going to tell you how the Greek language got an alphabet. After Alexander the Greek came into Egypt in 332 BCE, he forced the Greek language on our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. By them being a literate people, they took one of their alphabets and applied it to the Greek language. So the Greeks never had an alphabet, but it was the Greek language that an alphabet was applied to by the ancient Egyptians after the Greek language was forced on them.
Okay, there you have it. Fantastic. Now, I would like to introduce you to something. I got a message today from a young gentleman on YouTube, Guy R. Brewer, 109. He stated the following: "Rest in peace, Professor Walter Williams. I researched every name, date you ever mentioned. I combed through your bibliographies and found out you was 100% correct in regards to the Lombards. A few of their legends popped up in the Old Testament and Quran, proving beyond any doubt that you were correct. From wanderings, David and Goliath, Aaron, Moses, and their mother, plucked from the water and raised with royalty, plagues and Passovers, damn near word for word, all of it was Lombard legend. That's why the chosen people have never called you anti-Semitic or brought any attention to you. They knew you was right. Arabic is an alphabet and not a language, just as you said, and that every country in the Middle East have a different dialect that bear little resemblance to each other, proving again that they are invaders. Islam is the easiest of the three to prove as false, because, as you said, the literature is not even 100 years old. I plan to publish your findings and some of the things I know you know, but never mention how the fake Babylonian tablets are and the person who brought them into existence, Edgar Banks. What a surprise for me to learn that who the Indiana Jones character was depicted. You was on point again. Rest in peace. Your words and research will be required reading for black folks in due time. Okay. That was something that was sent to me as praises on one of our previous broadcasts that me and Dr. Williams did in the past. And would really be looking forward to seeing what this gentleman is going to release. I really like to see that. Keep in mind, once again, ladies and gentlemen, the number to dial into the broadcast is 563-999-3443. Press 1 on your phone if you got something to say. Open up the phone line so you can get in. But in the meantime, I am going to continue with what Dr. Williams is saying.
And produce. So these 3 books will walk you through the history and tell you, the reader, how these religions came about.
Okay, then let's move on to history. And try to get you are saying now that the Europeans wrote history, and they wrote it according to the Bible. Explain that all of this historical places, Mesopotamia and all that, comes out of the Bible. Kind of give how that is connected, where we get history that parallels that. Do that one more time. I know you said that. Just touch on it so we can move on.
Okay, well, see, you have to understand that the subject called history was created by the Europeans.
Right.
And what they used as their base foundation was the Bible. You see? The Old Testament and the New Testament. And the New Testament was written by a homosexual by the name of Desiderius Erasmus. Okay? He was commissioned by Pope Alexander VI in 1500 to write something on the object of Christianity. The object of Christianity is Jesus the Christ. So what he did, after 16 years of formulating his writings, he came out with what is known as the Synoptic Gospels, or the 3 Gospels, or the 3 manuscripts, which is consisting of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. They always tell you that John came later. That's true. So he came out with the Synoptic Gospel, or the Old Testament, the New Testament, but it was called in 1516 the Novum Instrumentum. 1519 they changed it to the Novum Testamentum. 1535 they changed it to the New Testament. Now Erasmus, Desiderius Erasmus, was a European playwright who was an ex-Roman Catholic priest. Okay? And he came out for the very first time with the creation of what we know today as a New Testament. And then he went on and added 6 more other books to the New Testament, or the Novum Instrumentum, which is 1 and 2 Peter, 1 and 2 Corinthians, Galatians, and Epistles to the Romans. Those are his 6 manuscripts. So he had 9 manuscripts that made up the New Testament. This is history. Okay? So once you understand that the Old Testament and was written and came out of the religion called Judaism, and the New Testament was created separately, independent of the Old Testament, by one Desiderius Erasmus for the Roman Catholic Church. And it was put under one cover for the very first time by a man by the name of Jacob van Liesveld in 1527. See, I'm giving you a lot of history that no one else is giving you. 1527 is when they put the Old and the New Testament under one book. Okay, under one cover. That was done by Jacob van Liesveld, a Swedish theologian. And then in 1535, Martin Luther put the Old and the New Testament under one cover also. You see? So you have to understand how these things come about. They just don't pop up. Correct. They are done by a progression of time, people, places, and events that makes up the ingredients for history. Okay? And So once you understand that, then you can put all these things together, and these things will fall in place for your complete understanding. Now, the question that you asked me was what now?
Christianity. I wanted to know how far Christianity goes back and how it kind of evolved and its connection with Hebrew or the Jews, because there was a Christian, there was the Crusades and etc. And so there had to be a form of a religion, but it didn't have to be, as you say, connected to Judaism.
See, Christianity is not connected to Judaism.
That's what I was.
Okay, Christianity is not connected to Judaism. Only at a time in history that the Jews connected Christianity to, I'm sorry, the time in history when the Jews connected Judaism.
Okay. Let's go down here to number 4. Hold on a minute. So this is getting interesting. Now, I have another part where he tells you straight from the hip how history was created, the damage that it has done, and so on and so forth. But let's move on.
In 1517, to start what is known as a Protestant movement against the Roman Catholic Church, and to break up that church, so to speak. And once that was done, the Protestant movement began. Okay? And what the Jews did at that point was to create Protestant Christian schools for the community or for the Europeans. That was beginning. School system began in Germany. Okay? Because, you know, Martin Luther penned or nailed 95 Reformed theses on the church council door in Wittenberg, Germany. So therefore, the school system for the Europeans began there. An organized school system began there. And the Roman Catholic Church countered that with parochial schools for the masses of people. And at that point, the Renaissance era began. They call that the Age of Enlightenment for the Europeans. See? So now, here you have a beginning school system. In a school system, you have to have a curriculum. And in that curriculum, the Europeans created history. No other races of people throughout the world wrote a history of themselves because, number one, they had no alphabet, only the ancient Egyptians. And if the ancient Egyptians wrote anything about themselves as a history, you couldn't read it anyway because it was in hieroglyphic form, and the hieroglyphic, like I mentioned before, has never been deciphered. You see that? One also has to realize that the chronology of ancient Egypt, such as the first dynasty, second dynasty, the third dynasty, the fourth dynasty, Akhenaten, and you name it, was created by the Europeans. He created that chronology of ancient Egypt. Okay? And the ancient Egyptians never wrote a history or a chronology of themselves. So I don't want anybody in the listening audience to think that the chronology of ancient Egypt as being used and taught today, that the ancient Egyptians wrote it. No, it was Europeans who wrote it. So when the Europeans, let's get back to Europe, when the Europeans formulated and created a school system beginning in Germany for the masses of people, that time in history, we're talking about the middle of the 16th century, that time in history is called the Renaissance era. And they created and put into their curriculum a subject called history. So whoever created history, whoever writes history, controls history. So the Europeans, by creating history, controlling history, can write himself in history to make himself look good. You see? So everybody knows, or should know, the history of the Europeans is based off of savagery. They were uncivilized savages. I'm not saying this is to degrade the Europeans. This is his record. So today, with history, he can write himself and make himself look good because he created the subject called history. That's where history comes from, and I'm sorry to take this long to explain it to you.
No, I have a few questions to ask you relative to that history. Now, I want to clarify. Hebrewism, you're telling me, is not older than Christianity.
No.
But there was a Christianity because you had the Crusades and everything. But you're saying the Jews, well, how could they be Jews if there was no Hebrew?
Hebrew comes out of biblical literature. You got to understand, Hebrewism comes out of a religion called Judaism. Mm-hmm. Who created Judaism is one Rashi, 1080 to 1100, 20 years to create it. Mm-hmm. How did he create it? He created formulas for it. The formula for Judaism as a religion. Okay? And that formula was taught to a people known today in history as the Templars. You have to go back into the Crusades to learn about the Templars, mm-hmm. etc. And they began to disseminate in a religious form the formulation or the form that Rashi created for a religion called Judaism. You see? So Judaism is not a BC religion, even though they teach the masses of people that Judaism was first, Christianity second. They said that this Jesus the Christ was a Jew first, and that after his death, supposedly in 30 A.D., came what is known as Christianity. But they are saying that Jesus was a Jew, and they teach you that from Judaism and Christianity came Islam, or the Muslims, etc., etc. You see? Well, that's historically incorrect. The first of the three major Western religions is called Christianity. It's all explained in my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity. Mm-hmm. The second religion that was created was a monophysitic religion, if you want to call it, for lack of another word. That was a creation by way of a polemic between the diaphysitic Christians and the monophysites. A diaphysitic Christian is an individual that believes that this Jesus Christ, which never existed, based off of myth, has two natures, one Osiris-like spirit and one a human nature. The monophysite comes back and counters that and says, well, no, this image that we know today as Jesus Christ had an Osiris-like spirit, only had one nature, an Osiris-like spirit, but no human nature. That argument went on for 921 years. And in my book that I'm about to release, called The Historical Origin of Islam, there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of Prophet Muhammad, will reveal this 921 years of polemic between the diaphysitic Christians and the monophysites. 921 years they fought over whether the image and the object of Christianity, known to us today as Jesus Christ, whether this image had a human nature or not. You see, so I'll walk you through all that history. History, Clemson, is the only subject and the only entity that will give an individual the truth about these various religions. That's the only entity that will give you the nearest truth about religion. If you don't understand history, you will never, ever understand these religions. And the moment that you embrace a religion by way of believing in these religions, by embracing the literature that's connected to these religions, you will never, ever find your way back to your own indwelling personal spirituality that your Creator gave you. You'll be confused for the rest of your life.
Maybe in order to understand it a little better, and I do, and I will move on, but I want to exhaust the subject a little better. Christianity. Give us the history of Christianity, and if it didn't have anything to do with Hebrewism, just give us a history and tell us why it didn't have anything to do with Hebrewism.
Because he, it's got to explain it to you. They're trying to take Hebrewism back into BC times. Hebrewism comes out of the Bible, out of the Old Testament. where Abraham is talked about. And that Bible, or Abraham is inserted in this Bible as a story, comes out of the religion called Judaism.
Correct.
Okay? So therefore, in order to have Abraham as a Hebrew, who was supposed to be the progenitor of the father of the Hebrews, you have to have the religion called Judaism. That's the only place that you find the connection between this Abraham in the Bible and Judaism as being the literature that this Abraham and the Bible, which is the Old Testament, comes out of. You see, so one has to realize that, I'm going to repeat again, one has to realize that Judaism as a religion is not a BC religion. You see? So it comes after Christianity and what we know as Mohammedanism/Islam.
Now, what I'm trying to get is a better understanding of Christianity, because we now believe, thought that Hebrewism, then Christianity, and then Judaism, and then Islam. But give us the origin of Christianity so we can see the disconnection of Hebrew.
You have to buy my book called The Historical Origin of Christianity. Okay, the revised edition. Buy this book, and I'll walk you, the reader, through the historical origin of Christianity. Okay? Then, in another 6 months, I'm going to come out with a new book called The Historical Origin of Islam. There's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of Prophet Muhammad. I will walk you through that history. My wife and I, we are going to write our third book entitled Judaism, A Historical Origin.
Okay.
That's what we're going to write and produce. So these 3 books will walk you through the history and tell you, the reader, how these religions came about.
Okay, then let's move on to history. And try to get you are saying now that the Europeans wrote history, and they wrote it according to the Bible. Explain that all of this historical places, Mesopotamia and all that, comes out of the Bible. Kind of give how that is connected, where we get history that parallels that. Do that one more time. I know you said that. Just touch on it so we can move on.
Okay. Well, see, you have to understand that the subject called history was created by the Europeans.
Right.
And what they used as their base foundation was the Bible. You see? The Old Testament and the New Testament. And the New Testament was written by a homosexual by the name of Desiderius Erasmus. Okay? He was commissioned by Pope Alexander VI in 1500 to write something on the object of Christianity. The object of Christianity is Jesus the Christ. So what he did, after 16 years of formulating his writings, he came out with what is known as the Synoptic Gospels, or the 3 Gospels, or the 3 manuscripts, which is consisting of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. They always tell you that John came later. That's true. So he came out with the Synoptic Gospel, or the Old Testament, the New Testament, but it was called in 1516 the Novum Instrumentum. 1519 they changed it to the Novum Testamentum. 1535 they changed it to the New Testament. Now Erasmus, Desiderius Erasmus, was a European playwright who was an ex-Roman Catholic priest. Okay? And he came out for the very first time with the creation of what we know today as a New Testament. And then he went on and added 6 more other books to the New Testament, or the Novum Instrumentum, which is 1 and 2 Peter, 1 and 2 Corinthians, Galatians, and Epistles to the Romans. Those are his 6 manuscripts. So he had 9 manuscripts that made up the New Testament. This is history. Okay? So, once you understand that the Old Testament and was written and came out of the religion called Judaism, and the New Testament was created separately, independent of the Old Testament by one, Desiderius Erasmus, for the Roman Catholic Church. And it was put under one cover for the very first time by a man by the name of Jacob van Liesveld in 1527. See, I'm giving you a lot of history that no one else is giving you. 1527 is when they put the Old and the New Testament under one book. Okay, under one cover. That was done by Jacob van Liesveld, a Swedish theologian. And then in 1535, Martin Luther put the Old and the New Testament under one cover also. You see? So you have to understand how these things come about. They just don't pop up. Correct. They are done by a progression of time, people, places, and events that makes up the ingredients for history. Okay? And so once you understand that, then you can put all these things together, and these things will fall in place for your complete understanding. Now, the question that you asked me was what now?
Christianity. I wanted to know how far Christianity goes back and how it kind of evolved and its connection with Hebrew or the Jews, because there was a Christian, there was the Crusades and etc. And so there had to be a form of a religion, but it didn't have to be, as you say, connected to Judaism.
See, Christianity is not connected to Judaism.
That's what I'm
Okay, Christianity is not connected to Judaism. Only at a time in history that the Jews connected Christianity to, I'm sorry, the time in history when the Jews connected Judaism.
Okay. Now it seems to me, and this is what I'm getting here. First of all, I've heard Dr. Walter Williams say, well, okay, first of all, all this here is milk and a lie, and it was put together by a certain date, whether it was 14th, 15th, 16th century, and presented to the world and peddled as if it was some real ancient record. And people bought into it hook, line, and sinker. This is what I'm getting in here. Because the man he's breaking it down, and he's giving you all the who's, what, when, where's, and how they did it, who did it, and what happened. All of this. He's giving you all of this. We'll be right back in a minute. Y'all hold on, and I'll hold your hat because we got a lot more to go. Hold on. back. Now, what I want to do is bring some clarity onto what Dr. Walter Williams was trying to explain to the young man from a whole different perspective. And we're going to come back to the interview, but I would like to break in with this information here. And for those people who are listening now that may not have heard this is a breakdown on the historical aspect, because it seems that the young man needs to get that part right. So let's go in here and take a look at this, and then we'll come back. Just hold on. We will be going in shortly. Keep in mind the number to dial in, 563-999-3443. 3443.
Okay, well, the historical origin of the subject called history begins with the Europeans during the Renaissance era. But you have to know something prior to the Renaissance era. We're talking about during the time of or the middle of the 16th century, which is the Renaissance era, or the second Renaissance era. You have the first Renaissance era, meaning in the 15th century, which is arts and crafts, and then you have the second Renaissance that came about during the time of the 16th century. We're talking about a literary Renaissance era. Okay, but now also you have to factor in the school system that the Europeans was beginning to create in Europe at that time. But then let's progress back a little bit prior to the coming of the European school system. You have to go back to one Johannes Gutenberg, who had invented a printing press with movable print in 1437. He had no money to continue to finance his endeavor of operating a printing press, along with the fact that during this time, we're talking about the 15th century, because we're talking about 1437, the Europeans throughout Europe could not read or write. There was no school system for the Europeans. So the only people that really could read or write were people who were associated with the Roman Catholic Church monastery school system at that time, which came about at a later date. So what I'm saying is that during this time of Johannes Gutenberg having no money to continue to operate his printing press, and along with the fact that the people of Europe could not read or write, he had to borrow money from another individual by the name of Johannes Fuss. And he borrowed this money from Johannes Fuss with a high interest rate, which he couldn't pay back. So Johannes Fuss confiscated his printing press, and thus beginning to do printing, etc., etc. Now, the first thing that was printed in 1475 was the Old Testament Bible for the Christians, or for the Christian community. You see, at this time, the Roman Catholic Church was beginning to build in Rome the Vatican by building St. Peter's Church. They began to build St. Peter's Church in 1445. And from that point on, from 1445, and 181 years later, they were well on the way of establishing the Vatican with other buildings around St. Peter's Church, which is known today as St. Peter's Basilica. They built it over the catacombs. So the Roman Catholic Church was up and about at that time, and they were the only ones that had a school system which they trained their priests in and through this school system. Okay, now here comes Johannes Fuss, who had confiscated the printing press from Johannes Gutenberg, who had invented the printing press in 1437. Like I said before, the first thing that was printed was this Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament Bible, as they call it, which is the first 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch of the Old Testament. They're all one and the same. So this left the Roman Catholic Church without any literature that was pertaining to their object, which is, their object is Jesus the Christ. So in 1500, Pope Alexander VI commissioned a man, a playwright at that time by the name of Desiderius Erasmus, to write something on the object of Christianity, which is Jesus the Christ. So now what he did, he took him 16 years to come out with what is known today as the Novum Instrumentum, or the 3 synoptic gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke, because they always tell you that John came later, which John did come later. John came out of the King James Version of the Bible of 1611. See, that chapter John was created at that point, you see, by Lancelot Andrewes and his group of theologians who created this Bible known as the King James Version with the 4th gospel in it, John. You see, for King James in 1611. But let's go back. Now, in the meantime, like I said before, the printing press was being used because the first thing they printed was this Old Testament Bible. And Johannes Fuss, who was a Jew, came about and printed the Old Testament for the Christian community only, because, see, the Jewish community had their own literature, which is the Sefer HaTorah and the Talmud. Well, the Talmud really wasn't created then, but they had Sefer HaTorah literature first, which was all handwritten, the Torah, which was used by the rabbis to teach their believers and followers in Orthodox Judaism. But that goes back into another subject. Now, with the printing press, with movable print being used in Europe, being used to print the world's first Bible, or the Old Testament Bible, which was printed in 1475, like I mentioned before, it found Johannes Pfaff in a very strange position. The strange position that he was founded in was that the masses of people could not read or write. So you can have a printing press that will print up hundreds of books or thousands of books, but who do you have to read these books? So there was no school system in Europe. The people, like I said before, the masses of people could not read or write. So what the Jews did, they went into the Roman Catholic Church, and they got a man by the name of Martin Luther out of that church. This was in 1517. And they encouraged and financed Martin Luther to go against the Roman Catholic Church to try and get this church to reform. That was called the Reform Movement, or the Reformation Movement. Okay? And he, in 1517, he nailed 95 Reform theses on the church door, castle door in Wittenberg, Germany, for the Roman Catholic Church to reform. Okay? Now, in the meantime, the Jews began to create behind Martin Luther a Protestant school for the Christian community, see, the Protestant Christians. And the Roman Catholic Church countered with that by creating parochial schools for the secular community. Okay, so now this is bringing forth what is known in history as the European Renaissance era. See, now I had to tell you all this in order to answer the question: where did the history or the historical origin of history begin? It began right there in the European school system that they have now began to create. In order to have any type of school system, you have to have a curriculum in the school system. Okay? So therefore, they use the Bible, which was now the Old Testament and the New Testament. They used the Bible as a formula for history. See, the Bible was used, you go back and if you can remember, the Bible was used all the way up into all the way into this country. The Bible was used for the teaching of history, you see. And what they did was that they began to use this Bible to create a curriculum for the foundation of history. And the European is credited today with the historical origin, or the ones that create history by way of using history as a discipline in their school system, or their beginning school system during the Renaissance era. And that's where you will find history first began. And whoever writes history controls history. And the rest of the race of the people did not have a history, or did not have a subject called history. They never wrote a history of themselves. The ancient Egyptians never wrote a history of themselves. And if they did, you can't read it anyway because it's in hieroglyphics, and the hieroglyphics have never been deciphered. And the rest of the race of the people had no alphabet to write with, because the ancient Egyptians were the only people on planet Earth that had a writing system. They had three forms of writing: Metanetial hieroglyphic, the hieratic demotic, and the phonetic alphabet, which is being used today all over the world, that we use today in our own writing system right here in the United States of America. And So during the time of antiquity, the ancient Egyptians were the only ones that had a writing system, because they invented what is known as the alphabet. And the alphabet can only be invented one time. Once it's invented, it cannot be invented anymore. So during the time of antiquity, they were the only people on earth that were a literate people. The rest of the people were illiterate. You see? So therefore, you have to understand that, and understand that this is where, in Europe, as a discipline, history was created for and by the Europeans. So they wrote themselves in history as being the prototype race of people on earth, because they controlled history. And they wrote about the other races of people, the Chinese, the people of India, the ancient Egyptians. They wrote about the Africans, and et cetera, et cetera. So therefore, they can control the subject. And they put it into their school system, in their curriculum, and they began to teach this history, this discipline, from generation to generation to generation until you have it today.
Now, was this history accurate?
No.
How was it falsified?
Well, you have to go into each item of history, or each section of history, in order for you to find that out. Okay? What they did, they created a system. And within that system and the discipline of history, they wrote about the people of India. The Indians of India had nothing to do with that history that they wrote about and for the Indians. Okay? But generations and generations has passed, and nobody says anything. They accept the history of India.
Okay, we're back. We see we have a caller with his hand raised. I'm opening up the line at area code 312. 312, you on the air. Who we got?
Good evening. Good evening, Tarhaka. This is Brother Yoel calling in from the Windy City to give the report.
All right, my brother one. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you. And I want to say welcome to you, man. I've been waiting on you here. And could you give us the report that you got?
I didn't hear that last part. Could you do what now?
I said, could you give us your report?
Okay. Well, it's with saddened heart, but at the same time, it's just time to supposedly be celebrated right now. But my friend, brother, big brother, and daddy, Professor Walter Williams, have moved on, as some of you all might know. He moved on and transitioned on Friday morning, and this is after pretty much going through from hospital to hospital to therapy and treatment for trying to get him back home from falling in his house back up in August. So what really started out as a fall kind of deteriorated into him not wanting to be in there, and then fell into want to eat properly and stuff like that to maintain his health. I don't know. I think he was wrestling with trying to get back home, and he didn't want to be there, and his daughter wanted him to come to her house, and he wanted to go back home. But then he went through that for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and he didn't like that because he couldn't do anything about it, though, because he wasn't being able to get around. He somehow in the house twisted it the wrong way and passed his room and turned around to go back and kind of tripped and fell. And that's when he went to the University of Chicago, here in Chicago, hospital, and initially 4. So, he's in the house alone, and he only has a caretaker for a few hours out throughout the day. So going back to the hospital, he went there for that fall, and he was kind of getting better, and he was eating a little bit, but even then he wasn't eating as much as he should. But at home he was drinking his water, and he was eating there. So then when they moved him out of the first hospital, he went to where he could get therapy and to try to help him to get back to walking with his walker again. And so he was there for maybe 2 weeks, 3, and he kept telling his daughter he wanted to go home. He didn't want to be there. So she kept maintaining that he couldn't go back home by himself like that, and then she got to the point where she told him that if he was able to get himself together and show her that he could walk and maintain himself like he was before, that she would allow him to do that. So that went on for a while, but he would do it for the people who came in to take him to give him that therapy while he was in that facility, but he wouldn't do it when he got back to his room. He was laying down all the time.
Okay.
And he would even have the women the nurses to feed him instead of him feeding himself and stuff like that, So he kept I don't know. I guess he's kind of resisted eating the proper food, enough food, and enough water, drinking enough water. He was doing okay there, but point where he should have been because of his age and being able to consume enough water in his body and all that. But then he caught what they call COVID pneumonia in there. How he did that, I don't know. You go in without it, and then you go in there, and you got it. So he beat that. So he beat that battle. They sent him over to across the street from there to another hospital to deal with that issue. So he stayed in there for about a week and a half, and he kind of maybe 2 weeks, and he got over that. And then they sent him back to the therapy place, and he was there for maybe a week or something, and then they told him that they couldn't do anything else for him. So they sent him home under a hospice, but I don't know. His daughter was saying they were talking to the doctors were talking to her, so she would tell me that at the hospice, the way they explained it to her, the way she explained it to me anyway, that that meant that he would be able to get more facilities, more products, more services available to him if he went home that way. But it didn't necessarily mean that he went home to die per se. But it was all in his hands that he'd have to do more with eating and drinking water and stuff like that. And he just wasn't doing it. So I saw him about a month and a half ago, starting to really let go and fade, lose weight, got real small and all, so he just wasn't changing that dynamic. So eventually when he went home, the daughter was feeding him and trying to make him eat and stuff like that, so he was kind of giving her a hard time as well. So but he wasn't trying to get up and set up and do stuff like that, show her that he was show her what he had promised to do at the facility, the treatment center. He was telling her that he would do that when he got home. And he would drink his water, he would eat his food and all that stuff, but when he got home to her house, she said, well, if you do good in my house, you can go back to the house. And then he still didn't do it. So, you know, he just kept deteriorating, you know.
Okay.
So that's basically how things happen.
Okay. Well, when is the going to have the services for him? You know?
Well, it just happened
Okay.
Friday morning, so
Okay.
we're still trying to get a venue, and we're trying to get one that's big enough. So I checked on some today. Tomorrow I'll have to go out and take a look at a couple of more, and you know, try to make a decision really quick. Hopefully we can maybe lock one down before the week is out, but we're looking at not doing anything with him until at least a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Because you know, because one, some people gonna fly in and they need at least a couple of weeks to kind of book their tickets and stuff like that. So they don't have to pay a whole lot of money. And then, you know, we got some other things to deal with. It's going to be a memorial, not a funeral, and it's not going to be. The sister daughter knows that he don't want to go to a church, so we just have to find the right venue right now. But it's going to be at least a couple of weeks out.
Okay. Well, what is the? Do you have any information on the last book that he was writing? Did he ever finish that?
Yes, he did. Not the way he wanted to finish it, because he was still trying to work on it. But for the most part, it's finished, and it is been edited and stuff like that. And now we have to get it back from the person who's editing it and try to get it published.
Okay.
Only problem is that between the daughter and that editor, they kind of two people that wasn't getting along too well. So I'm not sure how that's gonna go. You know what I mean? They're in New Jersey with the manuscript, and she's of course in Chicago. So I'm not sure how that's gonna go. But there's some issues. She did some things. She was somebody. In fact, she was the brothers Clemson Brown's friend of Clemson Brown's that did it. You know Clemson Brown out of New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
I running clubs on Clemson tonight. Right in here.
So she kind of out of concern for him called the city here to see to come in and check on Walt, and the daughter didn't appreciate that because the city came in as if she was doing something wrong to him, and you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. So the daughter ain't speaking to her, and she ain't speaking to the daughter. Well, I'm trying to say, don't let this manuscript get stopped because y'all ain't getting along. And then she has an understanding that he wanted her to take care of it, and I asked him about a week and a half ago, does he want me to make sure that book get printed, and he said yes. So she's thinking that he wants her to deal with it, you know, and all of that. So, you know, it's kind of like it's going to be some of that, you know, that colored folk stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully it won't be that way. I'm going to try to convince this person to release that don't go there with this. Let this get done, because people have been out there waiting on it, and they deserve to read the last, you can say, a well-in testament of what he had to say before he left here, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're going to, if it gets done, I'm pretty sure you're going to be handling, has she said anything about any other companies handling the book besides you?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I definitely want me a copy of it. Why don't you tell everybody who you are, how you get a hold to you, what you got going there with your bookstore and stuff, man. Give us your 411 on it.
Okay. I'm Brother Yoel, of course, out of Chicago. We've been on your show for some years now, and here in Chicago, I own the Underground Bookstore, the last man standing from the era of the 90s right now. And Underground Bookstore is located at 1727 East 87th Street here in Chicago. They can contact me by phone at 773-768-8869, or that's 773-768-8869, or they can email me at undergroundbookstore, the number 1, at Gmail, or on the Underground Bookstore at gmail.com. So those two websites, emails, you can get in contact with me through those. I'll try to keep y'all posted, and of course I'll try to make it happen and make it of the book available when I kind of get this stuff all settled. The smoke clears. Hopefully we'll still be able to have that book and read it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you got anything else that you want to let us know that maybe you done missed? Have you heard anything from Anita's sister?
No. As a matter of fact, you're talking about in-house fighting. That relationship hasn't been right since she passed, basically. That went way out in left field because they kind of disrespected him and did everything with her arrangements and didn't really consult him, and even down to the point of paying for it. Well, her brother paid for the arrangements, but they didn't ask him anything, as if he had just met her a year or two ago. And they had it in St. Louis, of course. So that relationship ain't been right since. And then there was some issue with she confronted him about her spending so much money toward Netta's burial and funeral arrangements, and she figured he owed her that money back, but he never told her, and they never asked him about it. So it's some colored folks' business again.
Oh.
All right. So that they really mistreated him when it came to that, and he was really nice, and children who came on the scene as a result. Her children came in town, and he accommodated them, let them stay at his house, and that went way in left field as well. Wow. So that was an issue. So, it's bad. It's bad. I have to maybe tell you that story another time, but You know,
Okay.
that's about it.
You got my number, so you can call me. I'll be here, and we can discuss this in private. But they was calling me every day, and they still are asking me what happened and is he alive, and does what happened, what's going on with the book and stuff. So I invited all of them to be here tonight on this podcast so that we can get the 411 out of Chicago from you. And but we're sitting here listening to some of his work that he did in the talks that he did. So that's what I was here doing now. But if you wanna hang with us, then you're welcome to do so. I know you just got in, and I know you probably want to get you something to eat, but you just put it on automatic pilot, brother. But if you got another question or something you want to say, or anything else you want to ask, you can let us have it right now. We're listening to it right now.
Well, I just like to say that basically, I mean, I'm gonna keep you updated, of course, and your listeners, but I mean, he stayed who he was to the end, brother. I mean, you know, hard-headed, stubborn. You know, he was locked on. He's from we are the descendants of the ancient Egyptians. And he wasn't changing that scenario. He wasn't opening up to any of the new information and stuff like that. So, you know, because we usually had to try to convince him to look at something else in the past, and he wasn't looking. You know, so but he stayed true to what he is. And as far as his belongings and stuff like that, by the way, I think I'm getting his books. And so I'm going to keep those, all this book collection, and then some other things, you know, from the house and all of that, you know. So, but you know, he was. I mean, but if he was with you, he would do whatever you do whatever he could to help you. If he's your friend, he do whatever that he can do, and that includes money. Because look, this is a man who gave me the vehicle that I'm driving right now when I never passed, because he wasn't going to drive no more, you know. And he just gave me the car, you know. It was a nice 2011 Honda Sonata, very good shape, brand new engine in it and everything, and he just gave it to me. And you know, he could have sold that. You know, they could have turned that into some money and just put it in the bank, put the money in the bank. But that's the kind of friend he was. But I was kind of blown because when he first told me, it was at a little gathering of dinner that they had at his house, and I said, well, why me? He said, because you're my friend. You're my friend. I said, I'm your friend. You're my only friend, man. I said, wait a minute. Then I thought about it for a minute, and I said, okay, well, he's 90-something years old. Most of his friends all of them are gone.
That's right.
So I guess that would be, I'm his only friend, the closest friend that he is anyway. So you know, but I was just saying that to say that basically that's what kind of, he didn't pay just lip service. He would be that kind of person for you. Then he not only did that, and he paid all of the expenses related to getting the license plate, sticker, all that stuff, insurance. He paid for all that. Okay.
Okay.
So he was.
Well, I met him down here in person, down here in Jacksonville, Florida. He come down here, and he bought some books with him, and you couldn't buy the books. He would give the folks autographed copy of his books, and we had up under the tent, and I had asked him what type of fish he liked. He said he eat fish, but he can't eat fish with the bones in it. And I said, okay, now I know, and anybody who eat fish, whether it says boneless fish or not, every once in a while you might find a bone in there, if it ain't but one. And so I had the fish filleted. It was all fresh. And I asked Arnetta what she wanted, and I gave her fish. And I gave him his fish. He wanted a different kind. I think he said flounder. I said, well, okay. And I gave him his fish, and he said, it was a bone in, and I told you I ain't. I said, I can't go out there and put bones out of the fish in the ocean, man. I did the best I could. But anyway, we had a good old time down there at the Marcus Garvey weekend here in Jacksonville, down at Fernandina Beach. And I had a tent down there. Him and her come down there, and he did the signing under the tent, and I deep fried the fish for us. But then storm come up, man, and whoo, everybody was up under my tent, man. And we storm off us. And after it was over with, and I asked him, I said, let's walk, because we were right there on the hill, and all we had to do was walk down the hill, and he'd be right there on the beach. I said, you want to go down and look at the beach? And no, I don't want to see the beach. I said, the beach just right there. I said, well, I tell you what, if we walk 10 or 15 feet right there where we at, you could just look right there and you see the beach, the ocean, and everything. He said, I don't want to see it. I said, well, okay, Dr. Will, I'm just trying to show you some Florida hospitality.
Right.
Now, everything. I made him some purified water, and we left the beach, and they come on by the house, and I give him some purified water to take with him. And they went on home. We went out there when he first got here. We went out to dinner, and I said, "Well, Dr. Williams," I said, "I'll pay for the dinner." Said, no, yeah, we gonna pay for the dinner. I said, "Okay, I'm gonna leave you alone, cause you gonna do everything. I'm gonna just let you do it." So we went out and ate dinner, and then we come on back, and then we went on out there to the beach, and they give them directions, guided them on up in the Fernandina Beach, and we had a good grand time just up for the storm. And I looked over the horizon, it looked like it was coming back again. I said, well, it got me once. I said, it's going to get me again. So we all left. We had a wonderful time.
Yeah, he was bent on his way, you know. And look at what he did with Ray Hagen. When he went to do a lecture for Ray Hagen, he was impressed by what he was doing, the facility and the size of it that he had there, and what he was doing, and that to the point where he didn't even take an honorarium from it.
Okay, well, he was telling me about Ray Hagen, and matter of fact, I had run the last show I did. I ran some stuff on my broadcast on Ray Hagen. He said none of the characters in the Bible never existed. So I ran that. I said, boy, look here, I can see the church folks running and hiding now. So they were like, oh, no, we got to get rid of this. It's awful Negro.
Yeah. Well, you know, of course, that relationship went south because he wasn't giving him credit. He wasn't giving him credit for the teachings that he was teaching that came from the book. So
he told me. He told me everything. I don't talk about it, but he told me about him and Ray. And so I said, and I listened to Ray. I said, well, I done heard that him before. And so Ray is going on and all this here. But you got a lot of folks out there, a lot of people who were pastors in the past that are no longer pastors because they have the truth now. But a lot of people don't know the truth and don't want to know the truth. That's the sad part about it. You can't get past their armor. They have a brick wall up with a steel plate behind it. Where you anybody come in here and tell us no truth, we rather have the money and a lie than to have the truth, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, it is. But it kind of reminded me of a quote the brother wrote in his book called Black Laws. And it was a quote, and interestingly, it was a quote from one of our, I would say he's an adversary, not on our side anyway. This is one. His name was James Oppenheimer, and I remember him saying that they set the slaves free, right? He said they set the slaves free, striking off their chains, right? Mm-hmm. Then he was as much as a slave as ever. His slavery was not to his chains, but him in himself. Then he goes on to say that they can only set free men free, and there's no need for that because free men set themselves free. You know, and that's what Walter was kind of bent on trying to do, set yourself free, set himself free, and that's all he feels that he had to do. But, you know, that was another level to it, and of course, we didn't got all in this system and whatnot, So I would ask him about changing the name or the status, but he wasn't going to lose that Walter Williams name, Jack. He said, every time he called me, even if he left me message, this is Walter Williams.
Well, he's got a lot invested in it now. He has another guy named E. Williams, and he dominated the Google listing and stuff. And but the thing is, I would always attach Dr. Walter Williams' books to his name, and I was able to find him. But anytime you put in Walter Williams, that other guy is gonna be the first one to come up. So they got in the system in the good old boy network, and he's in the European College of financial guy, so he all in there promoting him, and you can't always Dr. Walter Williams with the truth. You can't find him. You find homie there, we like him because he telling us about anything other than the truth about who we are and what we done on this earth. So they rather promote him and put him out front. And you do that all the time.
That's true. So, but hey, I think he lived a good life, but I think it could have been better for him going out, of course, than what it was. But that passing, he was just getting past all that stuff with him, with the wife and whatnot, So he wasn't out to clear with that. In fact, he still got to deal with them because she had a daughter and a son, and that's not, that's a certain kind of way right now too. So,
they was I don't know. I don't know about how that went, but now his daughter, she's going to handle his state.
Handle his what now?
His estate.
Yes.
He just have one daughter, right?
Yeah, one. Granddaughter. That's it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is we was listening to Dr. Williams. I'll run a little plug right here, and then we can come back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna mute your mic and run this here, and then we'll be right back.
Okay. I'll be a little longer.
Okay. Let's go to plug number 6.
The Roman Catholic priests had condemned the Old Testament, but Martin Luther condemned the New Testament. So it was a polemic there, you see, until Jacob Van Larsfeld came along and put the Old and the New Testament under one cover. They call it the Old Testament or the Holy Bible.
All right. I just want to drop back a little further. So I'll let you go in a minute, but I gotta get an understanding of this. Then if we're going back to the Coptic Christians, back to the Romans who were supposed to have persecuted Christians and so forth, what was the Coptic Christians preaching, and what was Rome preaching, and what did Constantine incorporate, so that I get an understanding that it was different from Hebrewism and Judaism and can separate it from a later version of the Bible.
Well, see, here's what you have to do, Clemson. You have to really understand that Judaism is not a BC religion. You have to really understand that.
I understand that. I'm wiping that out, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of now what would they, because they were doing something before then, because...
Before Rashi?
No. The Romans is supposed to have persecuted Christians.
What year? Starting with who?
Well, starting where the Romans ruled and what...
You're talking about during the time of Constantine?
Yeah, and before Constantine.
No, there was no Christianity before Constantine or during the time era of Constantine.
There was.
That's a misnomer. They put it in history. Simply because they are teaching the people who are Christians and the whole entire world through their school system that this Jesus the Christ died in 30, they call it A.D.
Correct.
Okay? So therefore, if you come up to the time of Constantine, there's supposed to be Christians there. We're talking about in the 4th century.
Right.
Okay? In the 4th century, there was no Christ, therefore no Christianity, nor a Christian church. You have to understand that. That's in my book also. You only get a Christ in history during the time of the Council of Ephesus. Ephesus is a city, or was a city, in Turkey, in northeast Africa. At the Council of Ephesus in 431 is when you get a Christ. Simply because you have to understand that this Christ image, it was known as Serapis then, it's in my book, was argued that this Serapis image, known today as Jesus Christ, had no human nature. So that argument was between Africans, who are the Melkite Africans, Coptic Egyptians, who were on the side of the Greek Ptolemies and the Roman rulers of Egypt. And you had the grassroots exterior community who were not on the side of the Romans. They would not embrace this religion, or they would not embrace that image that we know today as Jesus the Christ. Okay? So the polemic was that coming from the community of the exterior Coptic religious community, which is the monophysitic community. Monophysites means a person who says that this Christ had no human nature. Okay? And in order to have a human nature, one has to be born through the body of a female. So what they did at the Council of Ephesus was to go into the ancient Egyptian divine triad. And that triad consisted of Osiris the father, Isis the Holy Hathor cow mother, and Horus Jr., the S-U-N, the son. They took Isis, our ancient Egyptian deity Isis out of that triad, and they discarded her, and in her place they created a creature called the Virgin Mary, giving this created creature, the Virgin Mary, the title of Theotokos. And the word Theotokos means the mother of God. They amalgamated this created creature, the Virgin Mary, with this title of Theotokos, with this created creature, Serapis, now known today as Jesus the Christ. And the Melkite Coptic African Egyptians, at that point of amalgamation, said that this image that we know today as Jesus Christ, then known as Serapis, is now the Messiah, A.S. And in Coptic spoken Greek, Messiah means Christos, or today in English, the Christ. So you do not get a Christ prior to the Council of Ephesus in 431 ABCE, and that's in my book. You do not get Christianity as a religion prior to the Council of Chalcedon, 451. That's in my book. Also, you do not get a Christian church. The world's first Christian church was built in Constantinople, Turkey, by Justinian I and his wife Theodora. In the year of 532 ACE, finished 5 years later, 537 ACE. Okay? So during the time of Constantine, or prior to the Council of Ephesus, which was in the 5th century, you have no Christ. Prior to the 5th century, the Council of Chalcedon, 451, you have no Christianity. Prior to the 6th century, you have no Christian church until the Hagia Sophia was created. You see? So all what I have just told you dispel any premise by anybody, I don't care who you are, any race, creed, or color, how many books you have studied, how many universities you went to, that dispelled the myth that there was a Christ, Christianity, and a Christian church during the time or before the time of Constantine.
We're getting that now. I love it. Now, we're already back. We got rid of Hebrewism, Judaism, Christianity, but what were they worshiping or practicing before that period? Who were the Africans? And then when the Romans came in, talk to me a little bit about that. The temples in Egypt, the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, what were they practicing? And then what was the continuity of that up until this period when the creation of Jesus, and why was that necessary to create this Jesus?
Okay. That's a twofold question.
Yes.
Let's go back during the time of antiquity. The word antiquity means ancient times.
Yes.
There was no religion, no place on planet Earth. You have to realize that. Mm-hmm. Going back into Africa, you will find the Africans living in the continent of Africa not having a religion, but they had a spiritual way of life that included the ancient Egyptians also. They paid homage to their ancestors. They paid homage to nature. They knew the laws, the cosmic laws of the universe, and they lived their lives according to these various laws of the universe. Okay, this is just a short overview. Then here comes the first known European overview. Then here comes the first known European in the continent of Africa, in Egypt, known to us today as Alexander the Greek. Mm-hmm. At that point, after that, those Greeks came into Egypt and in other parts of Africa. After Alexander came in, then other Europeans out of the Slavic areas of Europe, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Albania, Hungary, etc., came into the continent of Africa. Okay, they are known in history as the Parthians, etc., etc. And then you have an influx of Europeans coming out of the southern areas of Russia into Iran, Iraq, etc., etc. Now, mind you, that was no religion now, until the Europeans came in there and began to try to get the ancient Egyptians to make them into gods where they, the ancient Egyptians, could worship them. So in my book, I'm explaining that. That's how religion first began on planet Earth. After the Europeans, after Alexander the Greek and the other Europeans coming thereafter, and the Ptolemies, who ruled Egypt after the death of Alexander, who died in 323, the Ptolemies took over the rule of Egypt. And from the Ptolemy rule of Egypt, the man-made creation of religion began at that point. In my book, I walk you through it, the historical origin of Christianity. And that was the second question that you had that was attached to this question. What was the second part?
Well, I wanted to know how then that Christianity wedded itself to the ancient traditional worship of the Africans, and was there any carryover? Was there anything within that ancient worship that became wedded to the new Christianity, the new way of worship that the Romans concocted, forced upon the people at that time? And then why did they cut off the old religion and begin this new religion?
So, again, Clemson, that was no old religion.
Old way of spiritual, the spirituality. Okay.
There was no old religion. Right. So take religion out.
Okay.
Always remember, man created religion.
Yes, correct.
Okay. The religions of the three major Western religions, the base foundation of the three major Western religions, Christianity, Mohammedanism/Islam, and Judaism, the base foundation of that is ancient Egypt. They have used the civilization and the culture of the ancient Egyptians to create these various religions. In fact, it was the Coptic Egyptians who created Christianity. It was the Coptic Egyptians who created that image that we know today as Jesus the Christ. It was the Coptic Egyptians who taught the Europeans from the Hagia Sophia, the world's first Christian church and the world's first university for Europeans. See? No one is telling you that. That was the world's first university for Europeans, and the teaching staff or the faculty of the Hagia Sophia were comprised of Africans. They were the teachers of the Europeans.
And what were they teaching them?
They taught them a variety of subjects: art, writing, medicine, husbandry, building. The whole thing that we call civilization today was taught there in the Hagia Sophia, only at one institution. That was the world's first Christian church and the world's first university for Europeans. You see? But in order for that to continue, you would have to have more than just that one institution. So that's the reason why in the 15th century, okay, almost 1,000 years after the Hagia Sophia was created and built by Justin and his wife Theodora in 532, finished in 537, you come upon a era in history, in European history, that's called the European Renaissance, or the Renaissance of Europe, which the first Renaissance was in the 15th century, and that was of art and crafts. Okay? And then the second Renaissance was the literary Renaissance that was done in the 16th century. And I explained that in my early comments about the Europeans prior out or put question to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Two, one cannot put Judaism as a religion in BC times. Judaism is not a BC religion. It is the last of the three major Western religions to come into existence. You cannot advance Judaism beyond Rashid. You cannot advance Judaism beyond the First Crusade of 1096. You can't do it. So here you have a spurious document that they call the Dead Sea Scrolls that they're putting on the masses of people throughout the world. And they seem to have gotten away with it simply because the masses of people have been taught a religion of one form or the other. So all the masses of people who are in a naive way of thinking about these various religions, because they are believing in these religions out of ignorance. I'm not saying it to degrade anybody, because anybody who embraces any religion don't know anything really about these religions historically. So they come out with a Dead Sea Scrolls. We have found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they planted these scrolls that they created in caves over in and by the Dead Sea, called the Qumran Scrolls, Dead Sea Scrolls. So when I went to the University of Chicago to take a DSS class, a Dead Sea Scrolls class, I wanted to find out what these Europeans was using to give validation to the Dead Sea Scrolls. I found out that one, they said that in the writings of Flavius Josephus, that his writings give validity to the Dead Sea Scrolls. They said that one, Philo Judaeus, give validation in his writings to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Then they said that Eusebius Pamphili, or Eusebius of Caesarea, also in his writings gave validity to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Then the fourth one was Pliny the Elder. They said in his writings that he gave validity to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So they got all this concoction up here. Now the Dead Sea Scrolls, you got to remember, was passed out to different scholars throughout Europe, in the European community. These scholars was given bits and pieces of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they were supposed to take from the bits and pieces to come back at a meeting to bring back written comments on what was given to them about the Dead Sea Scrolls. It took them 40 years, but they have never, ever came together with anything that gave an explanation of the Dead Sea Scrolls. But let's go back to what's keeping, or what's giving supposed validity to the Dead Sea Scrolls by the European community. There's never been a Flavius Josephus. A Josephus was supposed to have lived 37, and they say AD with a question mark, and died 100 AD with a question mark. First thing, you're going to have to come up with another name for a Josephus, because in the first century, there was no J. There was no letter J in the English alphabet. The letter J came about in 1630. They took the letter I, brought it down below the line, and put a curl on it. 1630. So in the first century, there was no letter J. So how can you have a Josephus? That's number one. Number two, they say in the AJ, in the Antiquities of the Jews, which is supposed to be the writings of Flavius Josephus, that he mentions Jesus twice. How can you mention Jesus twice then, and he mentions his brother James? So you have two names with J's in there, right? You don't get a J, a letter J in the English alphabet until 1630. It's in my book. My wife, Arnella Mayotte Williams, wrote chapter 9 in my book, The Historical Origin of the Letter J, and she explains that. And I explain also in my chapter in my book, Historical Origin of Christianity, in chapter 8. Okay? So how can this Flavius Josephus write about some Jesus that never existed? Okay? Now, the third thing they say about Josephus, that he was supposed to be a Jewish historian, right? In the first century, there was no Judaism, so how can he be a Jewish historian? Judaism, as I said before, is not a BC religion. It came about.
Wow. Okay, there you have it. I'm going to take a little quick break, and we'll be back to open up the phone lines from our illustrious brother Yoel, real dear friend of Dr. Walter Williams. So y'all hold on a minute, and we will be back.
Yep.
All right. We back, ladies and gentlemen. Brother Yoel, you still with me?
Yeah, I'm still there for Tarhaka, yes.
Okay.
Got a few more minutes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know because you've been running the store all day, man. Tell us about how did you and Dr. Walter Williams meet, man?
Well, actually, because of the book, he came to the store and me about carrying the book in the store. So, of course, I was open to that. He had already, he came out with the book the year before I got the bookstore, but it was about a little time. It was a little time that went past before he came here with the book. Probably about a year, about 2 years, maybe 95. When he made it by my place, you know. So that's how we met. He was always pushing that book, and every day he was making me push it. Put the book on your counter, man, and ask the people when that they read his book. If he calls me and he on the phone with me and I got a customer, ask them have they read my book.
Okay.
Boy, yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's how we met. Back in the middle 90s. You know.
Okay, now when you got the book, over and above all the rest of the books and literature that you have in the store, how well did this book do in the first year?
A book has always kind of struggled to get out in the beginning because it's a matter of how much you can advertise. But man, he lived, sleep, ate, and drunk that book. So he really he was, I mean, very few people. He's one of the very few people in Chicago. There's one other guy in Chicago that really did well with the advertisement and marketing of his book. But he was a media guy, and he got his out that way. But Walter got his out through media, through him actually meeting and talking to people and having lectures. But he didn't have too many lectures here in Chicago. Of course, the old saying goes, seldom is a prophet more respected in his own village. It's true. So he got more calls for him to speak and lecture outside of Chicago than here in Chicago, of course. And he met opposition because he was tearing down their Jesus. And people who were even in the Egyptian philosophy that he thought he would resonate with was actually going to church on Sundays. So that didn't sit well with him, so he separated from them real quick, you know. Well, and actually they went on they tell the story of how they went on the assault to try to ambush him by having him to lecture at one of their conferences, and then send somebody in to spy on him and whatnot, you know. So, but he did very well with marketing the book overall by himself, word of mouth, mostly in Chicago, and he got it out there. And I tell you right now, that book sells more than Dr. Ben, Dr. Carr, and anybody else in my store right now, pretty much. He sells about 4 cases of them books every other month.
Okay. Well, that's moving it, man. I mean, now that he's no longer with us, and of course, now at the outset of this broadcast, I read the comment that a brother sent me on a show that me and Dr. Williams did years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And this brother said he had been listening to us for years, and he did an investigation on every person and every word, everything that Dr. Williams said, and he kept running into everything he said was true and true. He said he's going to publish his findings on Dr. Williams' work. And I just got this email the other day, and I mean, people been calling me, they've been going back on commenting on shows that we did way back in, 2012. And I used to tell Dr. Williams all the time, I said, Dr. Williams, when we do a show, I said, we do what we got to do. I said, and then we get ready for the next show. I said, you don't have to work, because he used to always call me and say, well, how many people do we have? How many comments do we have? How many thumbs up we have?
Oh, yeah. And believe me, when he wasn't asking you, he was asking me to look it up. Look it up, Joel. Find out how many comments and how many people are on there. Every week, almost every other day, sometimes for a while during COVID, he would call me and ask me. Yep.
I used to tell him, I said, well, Dr. Williams, what's going to happen is as we go on, people are slow. I said, what they're going to do, you might have, we probably do 4 or 5 shows, and then you won't, this person might miss 4 or 5 shows, but might catch the 6th show and listen to that. And I said, wow, man, this is incredible. I got to go back through this brother's network and get in. They go back and go to listen to other stuff and say, oh my goodness, before they ever leave a comment or anything else. But as time go on, people still going back, just like I used to tell them all the time. I said, Dr. Williams, I say, we do shows, done shows 5, 6 years ago. People are still commenting on these shows. I said, you don't have to call me and ask me how many thumbs did we get you? But I go on and I had to stop what I'm doing, get on the computer, bring it back up, and give him the latest stats. And I said, well, I got it. Maybe if I get him a website and put some stuff on there where he can just do it for himself, he ain't want that. He won't call me to do it.
Yeah. And not only that, when you stop doing it, he had me do it. And not only when you want to know how many thumbs up and all of that, he will want me to read all the comments.
That's what I'm saying. He wants you to read the comments to him, what they said. And I never really had any negative comments to give him, but those people, you have some few folks out there that were so shocked by what he was saying, they give him a thumbs down. And I was telling him, I said, well, you got 15 thumbs up and you got 1 thumb down. He said, well, yeah, that's that same joker from last week. I said, yeah, that's him. I said, well, we just keep doing what you're doing, and we keep doing what we're doing, and we don't have to worry about him. And sooner or later, he just dropped off, and then we just have nothing but all thumbs up and all the comments good. But even to this day, they are still going back. And matter of fact, let me go here and see right now. That was we did when this brother came out and yesterday. But let's see up here. Which one was that? All right. But what show was it though? Where is it here? I'm looking for the actual show. Can I get? No, I can't get this.
And let me tell you something else you don't know. When he stopped doing the show with you, he was listening them first Sunday of the month still, okay?
He was listening the first Sunday of the month.
Still listen, I mean, when that Sunday that your show was on, he was listening still, okay?
Oh, he be listening to it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the show I was doing, he was still listening to it. See if I'm going to say something against what we said. I wasn't never calling Dr. Williams no lie about nothing he said. Everything he said was telling the truth. But what I was trying to do was get him to realize that there's more to what you're saying in this hemisphere.
Yeah. He wasn't entertaining that at all.
But that's what I was trying to get him to understand, that in this hemisphere, there was some stuff that is being uncovered in this hemisphere. But he wouldn't. No. We got to stick with where we at. And but anyway, I brought it up and I kept on rolling. Thing again.
No, he wasn't entertaining nothing else. Are you there? I lost the audio. Tarhaka?
Going to, and that's the falsification of our history. And I'd like for you to kind of explain to us, how that history that the Europeans wrote is then written out of the Bible that they wrote. And so the places like Mesopotamia and Ur and Sumer and going to, and that's the falsification of our history. And I'd like for you to kind of explain to us, how that history that the Europeans wrote is then written out of the Bible that they wrote. And so the places like Mesopotamia and Ur and Sumer and the Hyksos and all of these then are justified on that book, the Bible. And then I want to begin to deconstruct all of that. So can you begin to make that connection so that we will establish Bible literature, which you have already told us is a 19th century, 18th century creation that is somebody else's story. And then they take the Bible and write.
So you have that polemic of denouncing the Samarians coming from the European scholar community. Now, right after 1915, what the Europeans did was that they began to create artifacts, pseudo-artifacts, to try to justify an existence of a Samarian living in Mesopotamia.
You say pseudo-artifacts?
Yes.
I just want you to clarify that.
Pseudo means false artifacts. Okay? That they created in their workshops and in their artisan studios to create something that will try to give a true validity for the creation or the existence of a Samarian ever existing on earth. You see, they're saying that the Samarian came up, the Samarian history and civilization came up at the same time as the ancient Egyptian civilization came into existence. See? And they tell you that they cannot connect to Samarians to any known language group. They tell you on one hand that they can, then on the other hand they tell you that we can't do it. Okay? And then they say the only thing that we can identify Samarians is the art that they left. And when you look at the art that the supposed Samarians left of themselves, is nothing but of Europeans with keen features and long nose. Okay? This is something that the Europeans created for themselves. You see? And then they're going to say that Samarians left and created what is known as the cuneiform writings. Cuneiform writings are created by the Europeans to also go along with this false idea that they wanted to put on the world that the Samarians existed on earth. You see? So you really have to understand and study ancient history and really go in and really look at what these Europeans are telling you by way of their literature. Okay? And then when you look at the cuneiform writings, the cuneiform is attached to biblical names. They said that the Akkadians wrote with using the cuneiform. You see? They said that the Hittites wrote using the cuneiform. You see? They said that the Babylonians wrote using the cuneiform. They even took and put Akhenaten's name in there. Said that Akhenaten wrote the monoletters in cuneiform, etc., etc. Tried to validate the existence of a Samarian. You see, they use all kinds of tricks, but don't allow them to fool you on creating something that's based off of mythology to try to equal themselves with the ancient Egyptians. There's no prior civilization coming from no place on earth that can predate or be greater than the ancient Egyptians. The greatest people that has ever existed on planet Earth. And you see this smile on my face? I'm smiling because I am a descendant of the world's greatest people that has ever existed on earth. And when you look at me, you're looking at an individual who has divested himself of all religion. I have a free spirituality that's in place at this time, that's connected to my ancestors, my wonderful, beautiful ancestors known in history as the ancient Egyptians. So, no, don't allow anybody to take any credit away from our ancient Egyptian ancestors. And another thing they have done, they have taken Northeast Africa and made it the land of the Bible. See? Northeast Africa consists of Palestine, Lebanon, Jerusalem, Turkey, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen. All that land area is part of the continent of Africa, called Northeast Africa. In 1859, they created and dug a canal. It took them 10 years, 1859 to 1869, to create what is known as the Suez Canal, trying to divide that land area away from the continent of Africa. Can't do it. So what they did was that they used that section of Africa over there as part of the land of the Bible. Okay? What they wanted to do, Clemson, is to try to get as close to Egypt as possible. Because Egypt, when you realize the two entities, meaning that Egypt and religion, Egypt is the only two that has a true history, a physical history, something that you can go and see and touch, something that you don't have to dig in the ground to try to find out whether the ancient Egyptians existed on planet Earth. It's there. The Great Pyramid is there. The greatest edifice that has ever been built on planet Earth. The Sphinx is there. All your monuments that wasn't stolen out of ancient Egypt by the Europeans are still there. Okay? On the other hand, Egypt versus religion, religion has to have literature to sustain itself. Egypt don't have to have no literature to sustain itself. You can see, feel, and smell the creation of the civilization that was created during the time of antiquity by our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. Religion, you have to read about it and believe it in written literature. That's what they are doing and have done to us as a people. That's the reason why we are so confused as a people. We're going to have to find our way back to ancient Egypt. We're going to have to divest ourselves in all religion. We're going to have to take the religion of Christianity and this image that we know today as Jesus Christ and throw it in the nearest garbage can that you can find. You're going to have to take Islam alaikum and alaikum salam and the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, all of that garbage, and throw it in the garbage can to clear your mind of all this confusion. You're going to have to take this black Hebrew Israelitism. You're going to have to go somewhere and get yourself a blood transfusion and run all this black Hebrew Israelite, this Hebrew blood out of your system that you think existed during the time of Abraham. Never been an Abraham. So divest yourself of all of that. Okay? Get yourself a spiritual enema. Clean your system out. Get back into your own indwelling spiritual power that your Creator gave you at the time of your birth. It's inside of you. Don't come outside and bring that power, that spiritual power that the Creator gave you that's connected to the whole entire universe by way of your pineal gland. Don't bring that spiritual power and invest it into a dead, man-made religion. And you take this God that you have been believing in a God, and this God that has been put upon you. Take this God and throw it in the nearest garbage can that you can find, along with the rest of this religious garbage.
Now, let me ask you, are you saying that there were no people in that area of what they call Sumer or Mesopotamia, because there are monuments that, the zygotes and things like that? Talk to me about that.
Only people living in that area was Africans. That's Northeast Africa. The artifacts that they tell you that they found over there, they created those artifacts. Mm-hmm. Like I told you before, the European scholar academic community argued against any existence of a Samarian.
But you're saying there were people.
Africans, yes. They had nothing to do with what they're talking about today in the Bible or in so-called pseudo-history that the Europeans created. It has nothing to do with that.
Then what was the interrelationship with those Africans in that area, Mesopotamia, Persia? Maybe you should talk about Persia. What about the Persians?
Never been a Persian. Persian is strictly biblical literature.
Babylon?
It's all biblical literature.
Then explain that area. Who was there and what was the
African.
relationship? What was the relationship with Egypt?
They were all connected by way of them being African. Any African throughout the continent of Africa, or any African today, 1999, can claim to be an ancient Egyptian. All you have to do, the qualification for that is to be an African. Okay?
So are you saying there was a sharing of culture and of language and of general information?
No. I'm saying that if you go throughout the continent of Africa, you have, wherever the geographical land area where the Africans live, they have their own culture and civilization and language. Okay? The ancient Egyptians had his unique culture, language, and civilization. The ancient Egyptians, the people that we know in history of the ancient Egyptians, were the ones that the that the first temple ever built over in Jerusalem was the Temple of Solomon. But see, people are led to believe that this Solomon was the biblical Solomon.
Correct.
No. it was a real life, live person by the name of Solomon Bar Isaac called Rashid.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that financed, like I mentioned before, financed Godfrey of Debunking and his brother Baldwin in the first army coming out of out of northern France into Turkey.
Now, how do because you give credence to Christianity and to Christians, but are they made up because they're in the Bible? The Old Testament is the Christians, and the New Testament is the book of the Christians. How is it different? I mean, how am I going to separate? You give credit to one, but yet you say that is made up.
Same thing. You mean the incarnated names?
No, Christianity. You say that Christianity, that there were Montfort Christians, and there were actually Christians, and there was a Christian church, there was a Catholic church, and you give credence to that.
Yes.
But yet at the same time, you say that the whole Bible is fictitious, it's made up.
Two different entities. Religion, the creation of the religion, was done by time, people, places, and events, which is called history. That's the ingredients for history. The four ingredients for history is time, people, places, and events. That has nothing to do with the literature. See, you and I can write literature, and we can predate it 10,000 years ago. All we need is a system, or some kind of system to put it in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you have to separate the actual history that was created by people from the fictitious literature. That has nothing to do with each other. Mm-hmm. Two different things. But you have to, when you're dealing with history, not literature now, mm-hmm. there are timelines mm-hmm. that is involved. Mm-hmm. Okay? Yes, Christianity began in the 5th century, mm-hmm. starting at the Council of Ephesus, 431. Mm-hmm. When they took from our ancient Egyptian divine triad, Isis out of that triad, and created a fictitious creature by the name of the Virgin Mary, giving this Virgin Mary the Theotokos, a title called the Theotokos, which is to mean the Mother of God. God who? This Serapis, who is known today as Jesus the Christ. The two creatures were amalgamated together. Okay? And once that amalgamation of the two creatures, the created creature, the Virgin Mary, with the created title of the Theotokos, the Mother of Jesus, or the Mother of Serapis, or the Mother of God, came about, then the Melkite Coptic Egyptians said that this now is the Messiah, or in Coptic spoken Greek, this is the Christos, or in English, the Christ. See, that's history. Now, prior to that, if someone come up and say that Constantine, or during the time of Constantine there was Christian, historically incorrect. See? If someone says that there were Christians in the 1st century, historically correct. Incorrect. Sorry. If someone come up and say that there was Christians in the 2nd century, historically incorrect. 3rd century, historically incorrect. 4th century, historically incorrect. When did you get Christians or Christianity? First you have to have a Christ. You don't get a Christ until the 5th century at the Council of Ephesus. You don't get Christianity until the close of the Council of Chalcedon in 451. That's history. You don't get the building of a church, or the world's first Christian church, until 532, when Justinian and his wife built the Hagia Sophia. They finished it in 537. That's history. Now then you have the literature. That's another history altogether. Because it took, in order to create this literature, it took time, people, places, and events through a process of time, people, places, and events. Now, in 1475, you have a Old Testament. But it was created by Moses Maimonides, or Moses Maimon, in the 12th century. He began to write the first 5 books of Moses, or the Pentateuch, or the Old Testament in 1180. You see? Which was nothing but an appendix of the writing, or the formulated writing of Rashi, who wrote Sefer Ha-Yatha literature. Sefer means book, Ha means of, and Yatha means of the upright ones. See? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. See, those are the upright ones. See, that's your foundation for the Old Testament. Then that was from Rashi coming out in the late 11th and early 12th century, writing and creating the formula for Judaism. That formula housed what is known as the Old Testament. Then his grandson, Jacob ben Meir, who was the Baal Tosafot writer. The word Tosafot means a writer of appendix. Okay? He began to add appendix to his grandfather's writing. Then here come, right after Jacob ben Meir, here come Moses Maimonides, or Moses Maimon. He was a Tosafot writer. He began to add appendix to Jacob ben Meir's writing and his grandfather's writing, Rashi. So today we have an Old Testament that was first printed in 1475, which contained the first 5 books of Moses. Moses who? Moses Maimonides. But they don't tell you that. They say the first 5 books of Moses and make the believer in the religious community believe that there was a Moses living in Egypt, etc., etc. There's never been a Moses living in Egypt. Okay? But that's another subject we're gonna take up before this program is over with. About a non-Moses, by a non-slaves building the pyramids. But that we're going to get into that. So I was giving you a progression of how the religion came about, Christianity, how the religious literature came about, 2 different entities. So you don't ever try to put them together like that. You separate them, then you can see, when you separate them, how each came into existence.
Okay, then tell me this, because if you go back dealing with Christian literature, supposedly Christian literature, you get St. Augustus, who's supposed to have been African. You get who's supposed to have written a lot of the Christian literature, liturgy that we read. You get the Pope, you get Rome, what is that place where the Pope is? All of that, I mean, you get structure, the Vatican, you get structure, but all of that was supposed to have came out of Christianity.
Suppose, like you said, it came by way of literature. You know, that the literature that is used to write Christian literature, or the base foundation of Christian literature, is called patristic theology, or patristic philosophy. That's the literature that they use to write Christian literature with. Okay? You mentioned Augustine. Augustine was supposed to have been one of the fathers of the church.
Correct.
Like Eusebius Pamphili, or Eusebius of Caesarea, supposed to have been one of the fathers of the church. In fact, the Roman Catholic Church today said that their theology, their religious theology, is based off of St. Augustine. Okay? There's never been an Augustine. There's never been a Eusebius. Because if you, I'll tell you what you do, an individual go to their library and you go and find a set of new Catholic encyclopedias. And you look up there, Fathers of the Church. And it will give you a list of supposed Fathers of the Church. And every one of those Fathers of the Church, they give you a date with the birth date and the death date of those supposed Fathers of the Church. I think it's roughly around 28 or 30 or 30-something names that are listed in that list of Fathers of the Church of the Roman. Now the Church, when they say the Church, they mean the Roman Catholic Church. Okay? So when they give you those dates, birth date and death dates of those names, guess what, Clemson? All those names predate the 5th century. See? Now mind you, one, if you're serious student of history, you have to know when this Christ was created. Christ was created at the Council of Ephesus in 431. So prior to 431, you had no Christ or no Christianity or no Christian church. The world's first Christian church, I'll go back, was built in Constantinople, Turkey, known today as the Hagia Sophia. Okay? There was no church in Rome. Okay? That was the world's first Christian church. Okay? Now, so when you study the church fathers, all of those names with birth dates and death dates predates the 5th century, predates Christianity, predates Christ, predates the building of the world's first Christian church. You see, that's history. Okay? So that's all based off of patristic writings.
What is patristic writing?
It's a form of writing that is used to write literature of and for the religion called Christianity. Like they have Perky of Both is a form of writing used to write literature for the religion called Judaism. The Hadith, the Sunnah, the Ishnad is a form of literature that is used to write the literature for Islam. See, every religion has its own body of and form and formulation to write their particular literature from. See, so now this patristic writings, in patristic philosophy and theology comes these particular church fathers, or the names of the supposed church fathers. But like I said before, none of these names existed in human form because they all predate Christianity. You see that?
Well, what was going on, that they had a council of Ephesus in which Christianity, they had to have something going. Well, can we go back to the Romans and come back up? When the Greeks and Romans came into Egypt, what were the Egyptians worshiping? And how did the Romans adapt into play with the worship or the religion or the way of life, spirituality of the ancient Egyptians? And how did they carry that forward? Because you said that the Romans was feeding Christians to the lions and all that. I mean, try to give me some understanding.
That's tradition. Okay. Prior to the Europeans coming to Africa and into Egypt, the first known European, like I mentioned, was Alexander the Greek. During the time of antiquity, the peoples throughout the whole entire world, living wherever geographical land area that they may have lived, had no religion, practiced no religion. There was no religion no place on earth. There was never a religion in Africa. The ancient Egyptians did not practice a religion. They had a spiritual way of life. The Africans throughout Africa did not practice a religion. They had a spiritual way of life.
Well, what are those gods?
That's an after fact. Okay, that's an after fact. So we'll get into that. But let me proceed. Okay. The ancient Egyptians paid homage to their ancestors. The Africans paid homage to their ancestors. Okay. To the ancient Egyptians and the Africans paid homage to nature. They understood cosmic laws, cosmic order. They called it, today it is said that they call it Ma'at. Truth, justice, peace, love, and wisdom. Okay? So they knew and practiced cosmic order, cosmic laws of the universe. They knew that. So that's how they were able to build their great and grand and glorious culture and civilization, by knowing and using and practicing those particular laws. That's how they built the pyramid. That's how they did everything, how they created mathematics. how they created science, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay? But no religion. Here come the Europeans into Africa, in Egypt. They wanted to be made part of the sacred society, or be made part of the sacred temples throughout Egypt. The ancient Egyptians did not take any foreigners into their sacred temples. They were rejected. Alexander came in 332, lived 9 years, died 323 BC. His army general, Ptolemy I Lagi, called Sotar, took over the rule of Egypt. He wanted to get himself admitted into the priest society, but was rejected. So he found a group of priests and priestesses in Memphis, Egypt, and he asked them to take his image and make it into a god. And they took two of their deities, Osiris and Apis, and made a composite of the two, and gave this Ptolemy I, this Greek ruler, gave him the title and the name Serapis or Osiris, supposedly making him into a god by giving him an Osiris-like spirit. He still was rejected by the priest society throughout throughout Egypt. And at that point, he began to confiscate all of their divine scroll manuscripts throughout Egypt and those sacred temples, and he began to close them down. He housed all of those divine scroll manuscripts in Memphis, Egypt, in that temple that made his image into a god. That's all in my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity. I walk you through the historical origin of Christianity. And this, what I just got through saying, is some of the things that I've written in my book. So I could take up a lot of time explaining to you the process of how Christianity came about. But it would be faster for you or anyone who is looking at this video who wants to know about the historical origin of Christianity step by step by way of historical process than by my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, the revised edition.
It's good. We can move. But I want to look at Rome and how what was happening, in terms of if not worship, but what did the Romans, how did they worship, or how did they deal with the spirituality, their spirituality, the Egyptian spirit? Because this is the second of the continuation of Greeks. You said the Greeks and the Roman were the same people. So please continue in explaining it, because I'm looking at this now, and you tell me if I'm right, as the first time Europeans are coming in and penetrating into Egypt. This continues on up to today. I mean, we lose Egypt. These Europeans continue to grow and to expand. I'm just looking at the progression of history, but I want to look at it as interplaying with the religion, because the religion plays such an important role in it, because we later on get out of that the Catholic Church, and I just want to know how that developed, how that ends up being all over the world, and supposed to have came out of this Council of Nicaea, and how did it develop? What were people worshiping then? I mean, they said that the Romans said Christians to lions and all of that. Just kind of explain all that stuff. Was it true?
Well, no, it's untrue. But my book, like I said, explains the progression of how Christianity came about. Okay. And I will take you into the various council meetings, the ecumenical council meetings that did exist in Northeast Africa, in Turkey, such as the Council of Nicaea I, which is called the Nicene Council, or the Homogeous Council. Okay, the second council was called the Council of Constantinople I, 381. The third council was the Council of Ephesus, 431. The fourth council was the Council of Chalcedon, 451. The fifth council was the Council of Constantinople, 553. I'll walk you through that, but I think where you're getting a little confused is that you, among other people throughout the world, think that it was a church in Rome. Never was a church in Rome. Not until the 15th century. 15th century. There's no church. When I said no church, I mean it was no seat of Christianity. There was no Vatican. There was no seat of Christianity. The Vatican in Rome today is the seat of Christianity. There was no Vatican until the 15th century. Okay? So when the Greeks and the Romans came in, what they did was to assimilate the culture and the civilization and the ways of the ancient Egyptian by way of assimilation. See that? Yeah. Okay. So no church now. You don't get a church nowhere on earth until the 6th century, when Justinian and his wife Theodora built the world's first Christian church, which is known as the Hagia Sophia, the Church of the Holy Wisdom, which is another name for Jesus the Christ. Built in 532, finished in 537. But in the meantime, there was no church in the Vatican as being the seat of Christianity. The seat of Christianity was in Northeast Africa, in Constantinople, in a church and university that is known as the Hagia Sophia, that served as the world's first Christian church and
truck drivers. Without them, our economy would stop. They're constantly racing against time, struggling against exhaustion, and being put under enormous pressure from their bosses, the big trucking companies. This can be a major reason for an accident. Discovering who's at fault can be difficult. We can help. Put our big truck experience to work for you. Call Farah & Farah, Jacksonville.
Attention Florida drivers! October is National Pedestrian Safety Month, and we want to remind you that staying safe is a shared responsibility between you and pedestrians. Last year in Florida, there were over 10,000 pedestrian-related crashes. As a driver, be extra cautious and look out for pedestrians at all times. Slow down and yield to pedestrians in crosswalks. Failure to yield can result in a fine and 3 points on your license. Remember, safety starts with you. This message is brought to you by the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles.